struck 3 a.m. The witching hour has begun. Are you ready to be initiated into the Black Magic Coven? Join your sisters, Andrea,
Liz,
Marissa,
Haley.
as we meet to discuss the macabre, creepy, and sinister. We call upon the four corners to summon a djinn to take us to Panic Fest. So,
We're so ready.
yay!
so in looking at the lineup for this year's Panic Fest, we were inspired by a movie screening called The Djinn, written and directed by David Charbonnier and Justin Powell, about a mute boy that's trapped in his apartment with a sinister monster when he makes a wish to fulfill his heart's greatest desire. So we're sure that goes really well, right, ladies?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We haven't seen the movie yet, right? None of us have seen it yet.
I have not.
No.
I'm very excited to see it, but yes.
Yes.
I don't yeah.
Yep. So going into this, did you guys know much about Djinn or genie lore or like anything?
Pretty much all I knew is from pop culture. I mean,
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like as someone that has consumed a lot of media that has a monster of the week vibe to it, like, you know, I've watched a lot of Supernatural, Buffy, Charmed, which we're going to talk about all three of those shows later. I think that this is something that a lot of shows like that have delved into at some point. So whether it's kind of more on the silly side or if it is on the scarier side, I think that I've definitely heard of the concept of Djinn and then the sillier concept of genie. So obviously Djinn being, I think, a lot scarier than the genie that we might know from like cartoon type things, you know, a fun genie. But yeah, I don't know a lot other than just, the pop culture references.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of with you, Liz, but I also realized I knew more about it than I expected based on the pop culture references I had seen in the past.
same.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me too of the concept of like the monkey's paw, that story, you know, when you make a wish and something comes back ×3 or whatever, and how that's been explored in various ways, like whether it be through the Twilight Zone or even Are You Afraid of the Dark? And maybe think of, well, we'll get into it later, but like movies like Wishmaster and stuff like that. So I'm not so familiar with the religious contexts either, but the pop culture references a little bit more so.
According to the Quran, jinn were created right after angels. So angels were made on Wednesday, and then God created jinn on Thursday, and humans 1,000 years later on Friday.
Fuck yeah.
So they're very like similar because they're not deities. I think that's kind of a misconception. Sometimes people think that they are some kind of godlike creatures when they are more human. But there's different spellings of the word, and it's been anglicized, you know, to be genie. It's kind of an interchangeable term, but they are neither evil or benevolent. They cross both lines. So it's not like all of them are bad, just like humans, the free will thing. And in the Quran, they also talk about how they were created to worship Allah the same way humans were, but they do think that they are above humans because they were created first out of smoke and ash, and we're made out of clay and dirt, which is not as romantic, I guess. Not strictly Islamic either. There's several pagan beliefs that do also believe in jinn. And it can also be used as a collective designation for like different types of supernatural creatures. So sometimes researching it can be a little bit confusing when you run into, they're like referring to devils and demons and jinn all in one collective group. But the jinn we're talking about today are, can do multiple things. They can turn into animals, so like dogs, snakes. Some of them can fly, and some of them take human form. And they say they prey on humans with like a weak temperament. So if somebody's depressed or has some sort of mental illness, the jinn could be causing that. So I think it's really similar to like, especially I think about like Salem witch trial days when like somebody had like schizophrenia and they're like, oh, she's a witch.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of the same thing with the jinn.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I thought was the most interesting is the different forms that they could take. So you brought that up, and I think I had no idea, like, because I always think of Genie and I think of Aladdin, like immediately, obviously.
Mhm.
That's like the first thing I think of. And so I always think of them as kind of like these almost like human ghost type hybrid things. And it's funny because when I was looking at the different forms, there was the zoological, it was like, is that the right word? Am I saying the right word? Yeah. And so they could be kind of human-esque animal type hybrids, which I thought was kind of interesting. But then they also had the fact that they could be represented by a shadow or a storm. And I think that to me feels more like, that sounds like Genie, because when you see Genie come out of the bottle and everything, it's always like a tornado. And so I could tell that some of that lore has been inspired by that part of it. Like, so it makes a lot of sense to me that there's a lot of storm and rushing air, and that kind of look I feel like is used a lot with genies, like when they appear. And so I appreciated that part, you know, connected to the original lore and then has been brought into the pop culture stuff. And so that was something that I found really interesting. We're talking about that part. So
yeah, I think there was a little bit I read too that like with that they could cause like dust storms and different things to just to make our lives harder. Just like for no particular reason, just for fun. Like that's nice.
Yes. You know.
I just think it's so interesting how similar they are to humans, because I didn't really know that. I thought that they were more spiritual beings. Like I didn't realize technically they have to eat, they have to, you know, sleep. They're not immortal. They can be killed. However, they can also live for thousands of years. So there's a really interesting element to the different combinations between like their human resemblances and also their angelic or demonic resemblances, and they're very much in between these two planes as like a creature or supernatural being. So I found that really interesting. And then after looking into more research about, you know, the folklore with them, I'm really excited that this film is premiering at this festival, because I feel like it's such an it's just not explored to its full potential. And
I totally agree with that.
In the ways that it could have been. And so it's exciting to kind of see this back on the radar, especially within genre film, because I do wish that it was darker. I mean, you know, those fairy tales, especially from, you know, Disney films, come from darker folklore legends and tales, but it would have been cool to like grown up with a darker form of the genie or Djinn. I feel like I was very much it was very sugar coated until I was an adult and started watching, you know, 80s horror films, exploring like different horror films, I guess, and realizing something like where they kind of came from, and then doing research for this episode. So
yeah, I definitely think the darkest part of the lore that could be connected to childhood type stuff would be the just be careful what you wish for concept.
Definitely,
because I do think that definitely was used in child horror or like children's like spooky stuff. But I don't think necessarily it was represented by a form or a being coming and then being that wish giver. It was more like, oh, I wished for this, and then something happened. I mean, like even something as stupid as like Freaky Friday. It was like, I wish I could get it. And then it's like, oh, well, you get your wish.
You got it.
With a lot of baggage, you know? So, yeah, I think it's cool that you can see how you can almost track the timeline of like, oh, it starts out as this Djinn concept. Then like someone twists it into genie. Then that genie concept becomes be careful what you wish for. And then like, I think that's kind of what's cool about this, is that there's almost like a timeline of like how now here's where we're at now with this concept. But we really haven't done a lot with the Djinn concept, which is why I think that's exactly what you're saying, Marissa, which is I think really cool that we're getting to see more film with that particular part of it.
Yeah, and just the lore itself, it feels like you can do so much. You can focus on one thing, whereas it feels like everything else in the past has focused on certain elements of the lore. But the entirety of the Djinn lore is very cool and complex, and there's so much to it.
Well, and also just like cultural and religious representation through a more dynamic lens, you know, especially within horror films. So I am really excited to see that movie and how they explore it, because I feel like the other versions of this is just so whitewashed, even though it doesn't try to be. Yeah, it will be interesting, and I do like the religious aspects behind all of this, even though like I'm not familiar with the Quran or I'm not very religious myself. I do find it interesting, and I think even like there was a part of the Quran that was written to be interpreted and read both by humans and by jinn. There's like a specific chapter, and I thought that was really cool too. Like I had never heard of something like that before.
Yeah, and so there was like a whole thing about them like being like humans where they will be judged as well, like to go to heaven or hell based on their actions. And that was one of the like more interesting stories that I read. It was there's two versions that I found, and one of them, Iblis is a angel, and in the other one he is a jinn. But there's a lot of chaos going on Earth because of the jinn. There's just lots of violence and bad things happening, and so he goes to Allah and is like, you know, hey, give me a army of angels, we're going to go down and we're going to take care of this. So they basically go to Earth to like destroy all the jinn. And so apparently this is why there aren't a lot of jinn left like on Earth, is because they killed most of them. But shortly after that, God created Adam, and he asked all of the angels to bow to Adam. And Iblis is like, I'm not doing that because this is like a dirt creature and I'm above him. And so
like,
he was,
I haven't heard of Adam be called a dirt creature. And I feel like Eve gets all the shit. So like, I'm fine with calling Adam a dirt creature too.
It's the new
dirt
thing.
Creature Adam.
So he's getting banished, and when he's like walking out, he's grabbing his stuff. He's like, hey, you know, I could still be useful to you. Like, I'm going to show you that these humans can't be trusted and don't really worship you. So he's left as like a tempter for humanity with hopes that he can redeem himself on Judgment Day and ascend back to heaven. So I thought that story was very cool. But there's a couple of those. I think the other biblical reference that I really like, being a fan of Ancient Aliens and like trying to find explanations for like why humans couldn't do smart things back in the day
without technology.
Right. There is in the Quran, but not the Bible, King Solomon, when he built the first temple, that he had control of jinn. And he used them like in his military and to build the temples, and he could command them and see them and talk to them. What I thought was kind of fun was that is in the Quran, but what's in the Bible and not the Quran is how King Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines, but he was a fan.
Okay,
what?
wait.
So I'm like, the jinn are helping his love life too, right? Because he didn't.
No way, they're not, right?
That sounds exhausting. There's no way.
Yeah,
700 wives.
You can't even see each. You can't even spend a single day with each.
No,
of them in a year. Like you
in an entire year. Yeah.
Yeah, and they describe them all as foreign princesses.
It's like
these aren't like your average like handmaiden. These are like high class. Like,
it's like an extreme version of The Bachelor, except they all win, except not really. They
just like everybody on The Bachelor always.
Oh, that sounds so fucking annoying.
It could be okay because maybe he's like, you know what, I'll make sure you have what you need, but like they only have to see him once a year or every 2 years, you know. So it's just like,
that's true.
I'm doing my own thing. Technically, I'm your wife, but
God, that's hilarious. I just had to like stop at that, because if that's like what, you know, like that's what we strive to do, it's like, oh God, 700.
That's too many.
That's too many. That's too many.
That's where I draw the line at 600. Okay.
Yeah, right. Like that's doable.
As long as there's boundaries.
Yeah,
can juggle that.
600 I can handle. 7, no.
7, no way.
No way.
So in the Quran, there is like jinn are mentioned multiple times, and a lot of times people will compare the Iblis character to Satan, but there is actually a different person in the Quran, and I hope I don't butcher this, but I think it's Shaitan. is actually like the Satan, but Iblis really as the tempter and like, fallen angel that gets banished, like lines up with the Christian devil more so, but it's actually in the Quran 29 times. So it's a pretty prevalent thing. And
Wow.
I spent way too much time watching Djinn sightings on YouTube.
I love it.
I watched that whole video.
There's like some
I
of them
missed
are,
it.
they're like legit
Hmm.
creepy. Like there's
The
a
one where the
few-
guy, they're like, is this a homeless man or is he
Yeah.
possessed by a djinn? And it like very, and of course it could be like,
But he's like a contortionist. Like in that one picture where he's like by the doorway is like, I don't know.
he's like creeped over and you just see
Yeah.
his head peeking around a corner and you're like, they're like,
Ew.
is this a homeless man or is it
It's very, and then he just
Djinn?
disappears. Like they turn the corner with the camera. There was a
he's
few
gone.
things that like I was like, I don't know, that could be CG, but it's kind of like suspect. So I'm not sure how I feel about Djinn, real or fake.
I don't know.
I mean, I'll be my skeptical self as always, and just
Yeah.
be like, it's probably not real.
Well, and that's the thing with like
But-
the sightings they had where most of them were just like, do you see that shadow drift across the screen?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's
It's like
probably-
Ghost Adventures.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's the
Just
same way I
gross,
feel
like-
about all
Exactly.
that stuff. Yeah.
I want to believe.
I'm gonna stick with my Scully self over here.
Yeah.
You guys, you can be Mulder. It's fine.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
where were
There's
these
even videos on
sightings?
how to control the Djinn and like how to like find good ones to work with, and there's like tutorials on YouTube.
See, I didn't watch that one.
So you
But
can find your own Djinn.
So how do you control them? Like, what's the tutorials look like?
I don't know. I didn't finish the video.
step by step.
Interesting.
Quick, someone Google it right now.
That sounds like some like clickbaity videos if I ever did hear about it. Like that YouTuber J Station or whatever, he got officially like canceled or whatever, but
yeah.
he always had videos where he's like, "Oh, we're gonna call Mickey Mouse's ghost at 3 a.m." And then like he'd be like on his cell phone FaceTiming and there's like a really creepy Mickey Mouse or
Did you-
something, and it's
Mickey
like, "Look, that's
Mouse's-
Mickey Mouse." Yeah,
Mickey
I'm not even
Mouse's
kidding. That was one of the it was. He would be like, "Oh, we're gonna call." I remember he did one of like a dead celebrity like a couple days after they died, and people were
Oh,
like,
that's
Just
awful.
tacky.
"No,
Yeah,
thank
gross.
you." But yeah, that sounds exactly like something he would do. I mean,
Like Mickey Mouse, fine. We all
Yeah.
know that's a fictional character. But
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
is he saying Mickey Mouse is real? Like
I
once
don't know. I couldn't tell you. That's a whole nother episode. We can
Yeah.
talk
Wait,
about
Mickey Mouse isn't real?
failures of.
we won't get into that right now. We'll save that for a later.
Yeah.
Oh, what if
yeah.
Mickey Mouse were a cannibal though?
Wow, how quickly you delved into cannibals.
That's just our
And for the
format.
first time, I'm not the one that brought it up.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real. That's true.
Shocking.
Lots of fun
Oh.
images. In my
Okay,
phone.
but can we go back to the 700 wives for 1 second?
Yes, let's go.
Because I was following along on our notes, and it's 700 wives and 300 concubines, right?
Right.
So concubines aren't wives; they're
No.
just
They're mistresses.
yeah. So that's 1,000 women.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'm guessing this was a power move because they mentioned that the
Whatever.
wives were princesses. So like if he marries like a princess, I'm sure he gets some sort of land claim in that area. And then they just come
Ah.
live on the grounds of the,
Sure.
palace, and like they don't ever even meet each
So
other.
they were an
probably.
investment.
Yeah.
Ugh. Gross.
It's a way to diversify your portfolio.
I love how men think that there's like an energy for this, like they could handle that. Like no problem. No problem.
1,000 women. Is that what men want?
Oh,
I hope
God.
not.
Oh, sounds tiring.
Waiting for like the honey-do list from 1,000 women. Like this needs painted and that fence needs mended. And
Yeah.
I don't have enough goats. I don't know.
Goats.
Like back then, I'm like, what did they do? Yeah.
What did they
Definitely
do all
involved
day?
goats.
They
Had
summoned
to.
Djinn. That's what they did. all
Yeah.
day. Just like someone to hang out with.
Listen,
Yeah.
I don't need any wishes. I just need a friend.
Just
okay?
really want a friend.
Aw,
really need
that's
someone to
sad.
hang out with.
So that is a Djinn wish gone wrong. Like I want a friend. You have 1,000 ladies now.
This isn't what I want.
Yeah.
This is your punishment. Yeah. Or like he wished for like the perfect wife.
Take
So he
7.
got 1,000 women.
Yeah.
Sounds stressful.
Yeah, no thanks.
1,000 of anything sounds stressful, aside from
Yes.
dollars.
Yes. I would
It's
definitely
true.
take $1,000.
Dollars, I'll take it. Anything else, I don't know.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say no.
God.
So I think with all like the background on that, like everybody said, like the most Djinn knowledge we have is based in pop culture. And I think we have 1001 Nights to thank for that. So originally it was a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales that was made in Arabic. Well, then I think just like everything else, there has to be like a Mayanized version of it. So Antoine Galland, who is a French writer, took the Arabic text and translated it, but he also added Aladdin's lamp and Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves that were not in the original book, but they were stories he heard from a Syrian storyteller, Yohanna Diab, when he was in Paris. So I thought that was kind of interesting because those are probably two of the most famous stories from it, and they weren't even in the original one. But that's kind of like, I think, where we got like the the genie coming out of the lamp story in that. So do you guys have like favorites of the genie?
Well, so some of the ones that I put in were specifically of TV because that was, as far as getting into spooky stuff in general, I would say my main entrance was through television because
For sure.
in high school I was addicted to TV and I was addicted to buying box sets of TV, and I spent, guys, I'm so disappointed in my high school self because I spent so much money on DVD box sets and they're worth like nothing now.
Nothing.
Like
No.
you
It's like
cannot,
investing in Beanie Babies. Man.
yeah, I mean, it's just so depressing because I remember I took a bunch of them to like half price books or whatever, not like, this has been years ago. And I remember just being like, this is probably like $5,000 worth of DVDs. And I probably got $20. I mean, it's just a depressing thing. Anyways, but
taking anything to half price books to sell is like that though.
oh yeah, but I don't have time to be getting on eBay all day and like doing
I have to box it up myself and sell it.
But so the first one that I thought of when I was thinking of pop culture references, other than of course like Aladdin, and then I also of course think of I Dream of Jeannie because I was a huge Nick at Night. I was a huge Nick at Night junkie, so But I remembered specifically there being, even I think they say the word Djinn. I could be wrong, but I remember Charmed having a huge that was a big episode on Charmed. And so they had a couple of episodes. The first one being Be Careful What You Wish For. Really ties back to and so that was one where a genie's wishes unintentionally caused disaster for the sisters despite his effort to help them. So he was trying to be helpful but kept doing stuff really stupidly. And
sounds terrible.
Yeah, so he wasn't necessarily bad. He wasn't a bad character.
He's like fumbly and everything he does. Yeah.
He's
he
just
was
like
just drawn that
I remember
way.
that. Yeah.
And
like Drop Dead Fred or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And then there was another one where Phoebe, it's called I Dream of Phoebe, which I Dream of Jeannie. Oh my god, episode titles for TV shows are so corny.
I kind of love it though.
I know, it's wonderful. But she is faced with a demon who had been trapped in a bottle and turned into a genie as punishment. And then when she tries to help it, because she thinks it kind of tricks her into helping it, I remember. And then she actually becomes trapped in the bottle and has to take the genie.
Yeah.
And so I remember that one a lot. And I think both kind of play with that thing where the genie Djinn characters are not really good or evil. They just kind of are, what's the best thing for me? I feel like that's the thing with a lot of these pop culture things, is that they're always in it for what's in it for them. Right. I mean, they're not trying to just be, let me give you wishes. It's like, I'll give you wishes if you do this. I mean, even Genie from Aladdin does that. I mean, he even is trying to, get out of his bottle and stuff. So Then the supernatural episode, What Is and What Should Never Be, actually featured Dean hunting a Djinn. They call it a Djinn in the show for sure. And it doesn't grant wishes at all. It actually causes the victim to enter a dream in which their greatest wish was granted. So like it would create this like dream scenario where they were getting their wishes fulfilled, but then while they were asleep, the Djinn would actually feast and drain their blood. Okay. So it's a very scary version of it. I mean, definitely scarier version of the Djinn character. And I would say just straight up evil. I mean, I don't think that that's towing a line on like, is it good or evil? It's like, you're pretty evil.
Vampire Djinn is scarier than regular Djinn.
I was like,
that's way
thing.
different.
I've never heard of them drinking blood, but right on.
Sure.
I mean, they got to eat and drink just like we do. So I guess they choose what they eat and drink.
I mean, Marissa, blood for blood, you know?
I know. Blood for blood.
We'll come
life
back around
for
to
life.
the Toby Cooper.
Yes, I'm excited to hear about that movie.
This is my home now.
And then probably my favorite and also probably the least connected to Djinn is from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is the vengeance demon concept, which is Anya, the character of Anya. For anybody that knows, I'm sure there's people watching this that know Buffy. And when she first comes on the show, she becomes a recurring character later and she becomes human. Spoiler alert. But when she first comes on the show, she is a vengeance demon. And so basically she grants wishes to people that have been scorned or like they, usually it's women that have had an issue with a man. And then she comes in the picture and she's like, what can I do for you to make this better? So it's right when Cordelia breaks up with Xander because Xander has cheated on her, which like he's an idiot. Cordelia is perfect. And,
we won't even get into it right now.
But, but she comes in and basically is like, how can I fix this? And then of course, when she fixes it, Cordelia wishes that Buffy never showed up because then her life wouldn't be what it is. And so then when that happens, the whole world has changed because Buffy never showed up and demons are just ruling the earth basically because she isn't there to stop them. So it's kind of one of those be careful with what you wish for scenarios because basically, yeah, she got what she wanted, but it made everything a billion times worse. So those are the three that like I immediately knew and I was like, oh, I watched those episodes. I remember these. This is what I think of when I think of Djinn and this concept of a genie and all that stuff. There's also an X-Files episode that goes into it. It's in season 7, so I don't even think I've seen it because X-Files kind of gets a little messy towards the end.
Messy.
But yeah. So I don't know if any of you have seen it, but I was not super familiar with it, but
that's weird. I watched
go ahead.
X-Files recently, like before the last season came out, I binged the whole thing in like a 3-month time span. And I don't remember that, but it all kind of gets muddled together when you're watching that much at once. So
yeah, basically a guy awakens a genie and like he grants him 3 wishes, but there's always like loopholes with the wishes. And so then it becomes like disastrous for the person. I mean, classic genie concept. Then of course we have Aladdin, which is our OG genie that I feel like all of us were first introduced to.
Yeah, I feel like my introductions with genies or like my experiences with genies for the most part have always been positive, or like you said, Liz, like they fumble. It's not had this horror element to it. It's always been Genie from Aladdin, I Dream of Genie, where sometimes things go awry, but it's not necessarily
their
malicious. Yeah, it's just that's what they are. And of course, Marissa, you mentioned this before we started our podcast, Christina Aguilera's Genie in a Bottle.
How did we not like think of that sooner? Earlier, I don't know how. I think I was just thinking about like how genies had sort of become sexualized in a lot of different ways, like with I Dream of Genie. And then, I mean, I can't hate on Christina Aguilera's Genie in a Bottle. Like that song was hot back in like 2000 or whenever that was. And I was like 12 or 13. But
I'm sorry, when it comes on in the grocery store, I'm still like dancing.
It comes on at the grocery store? Yeah. That's amazing. Oh Oh my god, I
Like,
love
let
that.
me
It
grab
still
this
comes
can
on.
of tuna.
Yes. Yes, you should watch the music video because it's so just she's like 17. It's
I
so
know.
fucking
It's
weird.
cringy.
Yeah.
It's
so
real
early
cringy.
2000s
Yes.
or
She's
late
like
90s.
rolling around in the sand and there's lots of fire and maybe that's like a reference to like humans
I
being
bet
from
it is.
clay and Djinn being from fire. I
Fire,
was looking like
yep.
way too into it and I was like, this is just so weird.
Like you
But-
suddenly see it through a whole new perspective. Like,
Yes.
oh, humans, dirt, Djinn, fire. It all makes
Yeah.
sense now.
Wow,
But when
Run
it
me the
came out,
right
like
way.
17-year-old me is like, yeah. Like,
Who directed that music video? They are clearly the one. with
I don't
Yes.
know, but
Djinn
it's like
knowledge.
hyper sexual and
Well,
seeing
yes.
all these like little kid anyways. But yeah, like I was thinking about the sexualization of genies and how and like especially for women,
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean I grew up with Aladdin for sure. And then like I think the Return of Jafar, the sequel had
Yeah.
an evil genie
Mhm.
with like the ponytail or something.
Yeah.
Was it Jafar
Yeah.
as the genie or was it
Yeah, I
Genie?
think Jafar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because he
Okay.
got sucked into the lamp at the end,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I think that's
Yes.
right.
Because
Yeah.
he had to take the place of Genie, I think, which I
Okay.
think that's a common thread in pop culture as well, is like the whole thing where the genie
Can
tricks
trick
you,
you,
and
yeah.
then you somehow get into the lamp and have to take the place of the genie, which is
Oh,
kind of an
And
interesting
that-
thing because it's like, the Djinn being a clearly separate being from a
Mhm.
human. It's kind of a weird thing to like get tricked into taking their place. But
that sounds
I-
so familiar, and it's even used like it makes me think of the movie Us, or
oh yeah.
the one I love. I feel like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
such a common like sci-fi
Thread,
trope
yeah.
in a way.
Like switching places with someone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I am kind of sad though, because up to this, I never really knew like the real Aladdin story. And I maybe it's been made and I just didn't look it up, but so it's a little bit different, but there's two genies. And there's one like, so this guy comes and he's like, hey, Aladdin, I'm your uncle, and I need you to go to this cave and like find this lamp. And it's like a super dangerous task. And so he sends him to go do it, but he's really like an evil sorcerer. Like he's not really his uncle. So Aladdin goes and like, he has a ring that he gave him and there's a genie in that. And then he brings
Okay.
the lamp home and his mom's cleaning it. And then the other genie pops out. But he ends up killing the sorcerer at the end. So it's like a much darker tale, but
Mhm.
it's kind of cool. There's no magic carpet and there's no Abu.
Mm,
Aw, Abu.
So
but it was cute. I did
yeah.
think about him. Yeah.
Andrea,
Plus,
you
I
said
guarantee Aladdin is not as hot.
no.
He's Chinese actually in the real story,
Oh, okay.
and the sorcerer is from Africa. So the whole thing has like been changed.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
different.
Well, you said Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, and now all I can think of is that Beastie Boys song, rhyming and stealing. The chorus is Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. Okay. That's all I had to add to that conversation.
You want to sing some more of that?
No, I don't actually. I'm not a good singer.
Well, so I had obviously a lot of the knowledge on the TV parts of it, but I know you ladies have watched a lot more of the movies. So
Mhm.
what can you tell us about some of the films that have been impacted by Djinn? I will say it is crazy to look at the list of things that are inspired by the Djinn concept online because it is almost never ending feeling. Like there's video games we're not even going to get into. Like there's tons of music other than just Genie in a Bottle. And
What?
I mean, like
Not the only one.
so many kids shows. Like Danny Phantom was on there, which I mean, shout out to Danny
Interesting.
Phantom.
Yeah,
being
that's a good
because
show.
I love that show. But like, there's a ton of things on there. But I know you ladies had some specific films that obviously delve a lot into this. So tell me about them.
One of my favorites is Wishmaster from 1997. And this is such a fun, enjoyable movie to revisit. And so it's produced by Wes Craven, directed by Robert Kurtzman. And fun fact about Robert Kurtzman is that he actually did the special effects for Night of the Creeps.
Oh, I love that movie.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know, it's so good.
Such a good
And
movie.
he also was on the effects crew for Tremors and Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. So
Heck yeah.
it's
Oh yeah, that
cool
one's
to
about-
have like a dude who's directing the film that also has an eye for special and practical effects, because you can totally see it.
Oh yeah,
When
for
you
sure.
watch this film, the special effects are so fantastic and so great and gnarly as hell. And
So
I
well
think
executed.
they're so well executed,
Yeah.
especially for
Mhm.
1997, when
Yeah.
a lot of films were exploring CG in genre. Like, this wasn't the 80s and primetime effects.
Mhm.
So it's one of those really nitty gritty horror films, and it's great. So it's also scored by Harry Manfredini, who scored the Friday the 13th, the films in that franchise, House, Slaughter High. So there's a lot of horror talent behind this film. So essentially the movie is about a djinn that is summoned from a stone that is found in this ancient statue. And Robert Englund, in fact, who played Freddy Krueger, is this antique dealer. So you get to see him without the makeup, and he's you know, buying all this high-end
I love the opening
precious
scene.
art.
I hadn't watched it for a really long time, and I didn't get to watch the whole thing today, but I watched bits and pieces as I was like reading about Djinn. And the opening scene where they're like, you know, they see the construction crew or whatever on the boat unloading the statue, and there's some construction dude with a cigar and he's pouring whiskey or whatever into a coffee cup. And the next thing you know, this giant stone just like crushes a dude. And Robert Englund's just like, oh no.
Oh no. Well, and then he pockets the gem, the gemstone that's like this really big kind of ruby gemstone, but the djinn is actually trapped inside of it. And so the main character goes to look into it. Her and her friend are gemologists, I think. And essentially this djinn is let out as they're studying it. And he comes to, oh my God. So like the djinn takes on different forms. I'm not doing a good job at explaining this film, like plot wise, but like you just have to watch it. Just watch it. But the djinn takes on different forms throughout the film. And like the first form it is when it comes out of the gemstone, it kind of reminds me of the tequila worm from Poltergeist 2. Or was it 2? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it's so gross. And he like, you know, wiggles up to the guy. He's like, are you in pain? Like, I can endure pain.
I can help you.
I can help you. And he's like, yeah, help me. And he just ends up like fucking brutally killing him.
I know.
So it's very like, what were you saying, Kaylee?
The opening sequence of that movie, it takes place in like, I think 1127 AD in Persia. And you see them in this like temple or whatever. And clearly things have gotten out of control. So they're trying to, the whole thing is to trap him in the stone. And there's like a dude who is screaming, help me. And you just see his skeleton slowly like rip out of his body.
It's so good.
And then jump on the back of another helpless person and is attacking him. And there's like a weird alien-esque, like almost xenomorph looking, like chest burster looking thing coming out of some dude's stomach, gnawing on a woman's arm. Like so much happening.
It's so great.
Few minutes of that movie, because you don't really know. You just see him forging the gem, and then you know things have gotten out of control. No more Wishmaster, and then you see it all take this terrible turn. And the next thing you know, Robert Englund's on a dock.
And a coffee spill just ruins everything.
Ruins everything.
So like the djinn gets out, and then as he encounters various people, it's kind of like a Hellraiser vibe, where like as he encounters more people and becomes more powerful, he becomes more human and takes on more of a human form. And so this gemologist is trying to essentially stop him and trap him, but he has like, if he grants you 3 wishes, and he goes about this in a way that tricks you and is, you know, manipulative, of course. So he's tricking all these people, gaining more and more power. And if he does this to you 3 times, or if he gets 3 wishes, then the like whole djinn universe will be unleashed onto humanity and take over the world, essentially. So fantastic. Watch
So
it.
fun.
It's so great. It's so fun. Ted Raimi is in it. Tony Todd from Candyman is in it. Kane Hodder is in it. He makes a cameo. So there's all these really cool, guys who are from other horror franchises in there. And I mean, I think it does the Djinn a really good justice in the fact that it is really creepy. It's a fun 90s film, great special effects. And it's just like an enjoyable, entertaining movie. Now, I haven't seen the second, third, or fourth
I haven't
one.
either. No,
I want to, but I hear they just get like increasingly worse and worse and more sexual.
Oh, that seems right. Yeah.
But I don't think he goes to space.
700 wives. Oh God.
I mean, it could still happen. I would watch that movie.
It could still happen.
Marissa, I was just rewatching it today, just kind of paying attention on and off. I just kept picking up on certain things where at the end, towards the end, I think there's like 15 minutes left there at that big fundraiser, I think it is. And he finally gets in and he just starts like making all these wishes come true. And there's a scene where this woman goes, I wish you could see right through me or something. And she turns into glass. At first I thought it was ice, but I think it's actually glass. Cause then you see her whole body turn into glass and shards of glass explode throughout the party. And some dude's face gets like cut off.
So fun.
With like
I
knives
love it.
sticking out of their face. Yeah, it's fun.
There's a lot of great gags in it.
Yeah, 100%.
So many good gags in it.
Because it's just
fantastic.
It focuses on the way he clearly is smart enough to pick up on, you're just like, oh, I wish I could go to bed early or whatever. And just the things that we as humans say that we don't really think about the intentions behind it or what it could actually mean. And him as this Djinn, he takes that context and is just flips it. Because I think before he goes into the party, he's talking to a security guard. And he's like, don't you wish you could escape? And he's like, well, yeah, because he's basically trying to convince this guy, I could help you get a better job. And then he says, don't you wish you could escape? And the guy says, yes. And the next shot is him in a like dunk tank, basically, in a straitjacket, trying to get out. And he just says, Harry Houdini got out in 2 minutes or whatever and walks away. And just he clearly takes you don't think about it like, oh man, I wish I had some cookies or whatever. And
it's like, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, he finds a way to take the most basic wish, even though, and then twist it into this insanely terrible thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen the sequels either, but I don't think Andrew Divoff gets enough credit for that. Like, I don't know, because when people talk about like the horror villains, like, and I think like he was just phenomenal.
He's great. He has that really.
It reminded me a little bit of like Freddy Krueger because the comedy. But yeah, he's so great. And I met him at Crypticon a couple years ago, and he's just a super nice human being too. So that's always a bonus.
Love to hear it. Love to hear that. Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, I think that's one that is just, if there was a menacing story about the Djinn, that one does it really well, even though it's almost kind of campy because there are some really funny moments in there. And then the score too doesn't take itself too seriously. Like even in the beginning when there's all this chaos and gnarly body horror going on, the score is still very upbeat and fun. It's almost like Jerry Goldsmith style, like Gremlinsy, like playful. Yeah. So it just has so many great elements in it. But I think that's a really good depiction. And on the flip side of that, which is not a good depiction of the Djinn, is, man, I hate saying this because I love Toby Hooper.
I know.
And he's a fellow Texan, so I'm like, but Toby Hooper's 2011 film Djinn is not great. It has 9% on Rotten Tomatoes for multiple reasons. And oh man.
Is it at least good bad or it's just bad?
No, it's just like bad. It's not good bad.
We'll spare you the watch and just give you a rundown of it. I watched it like 6 hours ago for the first time and
it's not great. But I did so when I was watching it, I was like, where the fuck did he come up with this concept? Like because the information I was reading mostly about Djinn had nothing to do with what this film was about. But then the baby. So like there's this okay, so apparently, so genies or Djinn could take on human form in some, like, I guess, tales or, versions, and they could reproduce with humans. So there could be these half Djinn, half human babies, right? And so baby Djinn were known as seers, and they can communicate with the divine or other Djinn and like relatives in the divine. So they were like religious consultants, and they could end curses, they could find lost animals, they could settle personal disputes. Even though there's a baby Djinn concept, and there was like this, they basically used this concept for baby Djinn, half baby, half human, and how Djinn could take on human forms and sexualize them and be, you know,
You
these
said
beautiful
half
women.
baby, half human, and I'm dying.
But like, isn't that right though? Sometimes, you know. Okay,
Half baby. Okay.
Half
Sorry
Djinn,
for
half
the
human.
parents
I'm
out
sorry.
there.
I know. I'm dying. Okay.
That's
I
when
knew
I
what you
call
meant.
like a baby it, and I feel so
Yeah.
bad, you know.
I do it
Okay.
all the time.
Well, they do refer to the baby in the movie as it multiple times.
Yes, it's so weird. So okay, Kaylee, I gave the background of like the Djinn baby hybrid humans.
Oh God, are we just starting as like a rundown of the movie?
Yeah,
and how it
talk
plays
about
out?
the plot if you remember.
Oh, God,
You watched
yeah.
it's fresh in your mind.
Yeah, it is. So it kind of starts out with, you see this couple that clearly has suffered a loss of a child, and it's very sad. And then it kind of fast forwards a little bit, and they're clearly going to a therapist to deal with the loss of their child. And is it Saudi Arabia his job is? I like walked away for 1 second. It's their
like where are
hometown.
they going? Or
Yeah,
where they
because
return
basically
to?
they live in New York.
They were living in New York.
But they're
Yeah.
originally from, are you looking it up, Marissa? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, they filmed around Dubai, but it
Yeah.
was also filmed in like United Arab. I might be butchering this. Emirates.
Yeah, Emirates,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So he essentially gets a new job in their original hometown. Her family still lives there. We don't know anything about his family. At some point in the movie, he says, "You're all I have" to his wife. So they're in this therapy session, and he's kind of trying to convince her, like, it'll help us move forward if we go back home, and I have this new opportunity. It'll be great. And at some point, the therapist is encouraging the fact that they could grow from this and maybe start fresh. And then she just goes, you can't stop me. and the wife is kind of like, what do you mean? And she turns to her husband and is like, what does she mean by that? And he's like, no, I know it sounded, menacing, clearly, but it's not what it seems. She meant it this way. And then they end up moving back, and her family, her father and mother and her little sister, pick them up at the airport, and they're going to drive them to his job. Basically provides a home for them in this luxury apartment building. So they're driving to this building, and they enter this tunnel, and as they drive into the tunnel, you see this fog start to close in. It's very
Okay,
slow.
that's the storm.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yes. So they drive out, and I don't remember who it was exactly, but somebody makes a comment like, "Oh, is it always this foggy?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, it'll pass, And then this family is driving, and it's straight up like foggier.
Yeah,
than
they
the
cannot
fog.
drive in this condition, y'all. Like it's like the mist. You can't see anything.
I was watching it with a friend, and he's like, "This is the foggiest movie I've ever seen."
You can't see anything.
And he's like, "And I've seen The Fog." Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That's yes.
Yes.
So they basically drive into a cloud, and it's just white all around him. And they're the dad's driving this Escalade, and the mom's in the passenger side, and her husband and her little sister in the back seat. And suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a shadow, and the dad swerves, and they're like, "Wow, what are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, there's somebody in the middle of the road." But they pull off to the side of the road. One of my favorite lines of the movie is the mom is just like, "We're gonna die." And nobody reacts to it. Nobody even responds, really. And the dad is gonna get out, and they keep trying to like whatever. And then the son-in-law is like, "I'll go see what's going on." So he gets out of the car, and he's walking around, but he can't see anything, obviously, because it's so foggy. It's like walking into a sheet. And he wanders, and you start hearing these weird like chittering and kind of like screaming, but it's very dull. Like it sounds like it's off in the distance. And then he comes out, and he looks up suddenly, and there's this huge tower in front of him. And it turns out it's the apartment complex. And his wife gets out of the car shortly after him. Am I breaking this down well enough? I just watched it. It's very clear.
I feel like you're explaining this too well, because I'm like, this sounds like really interesting. So
I am
far.
describing it better than it actually is. Like, well, and the first, I feel like the beginning of it, you're kind of like, oh, this might be intriguing. It's a little cheesy, but let's see where it goes. And then his wife comes up behind him and she's like, what's going on? And then she notices a tower and he turns to her and he just says, home sweet home. It's so corny. So whatever, fast forward, they get to the hotel or the apartment. They check in. There's a sketchy doorman named Sammy, and her mom's immediately like, I don't trust him. And she's like, why? He's too nice. He wants something. I can't break down this whole movie. Should I? I don't know.
No.
Well, okay, so they move in. They move in and they're like
Yeah.
haunted by these like baby cries, you
Yeah.
know, and she's haunted by like the loss of her child, and she has the same flashback throughout
Yeah.
the movie. Like her kid died. How did her kid die? You know, and
You don't know.
like you don't know. And then
And then
the
her
Djinn comes, and
her husband
it's-
has to go to work and she's alone and she keeps hearing these echoing cries and there's
This takes place
dolls.
over one day,
A
mind
single
you.
day.
They just moved in, and
Like the
then
whole
she
movie
just
is
gets
pretty much a
Yes,
haunted.
because she
like,
at one point she calls her little sister. I think she tries to call her little sister, and she's kind of having a meltdown after seeing these visions and hearing things. And she's like, "I've been here 6 hours, and I'm already losing my mind."
yeah, it's just. I
when
mean,
does the Djinn come in though? Like,
Pretty
Djinn is
quickly.
kind of there throughout the entire time. But the thing is that this movie it's a combination of like almost every freaking horror movie you can think of.
Yes,
There's like,
a lot of tropes.
oh my
and not
god, I
well
mean,
executed.
the fog. There's like
The dogs, the random scene where she walks out to like, I don't.
yeah, like Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, Rosemary's Baby,
The
100%.
Omen. There's like
So do they get a child from the Djinn?
No. So it turns out,
okay,
spoiler
just
spoiler
spoil it.
alert, if you really are interested in watching this movie, skip ahead a little bit. It turns out, so at the beginning, I guess I skipped past this part. They show like a very brief part that clearly takes place prior to this apartment complex being built. And it's these two natives and this like classic like dumb American dude.
Mhm.
And they are going to, I don't know, it seems like they're going to kind of check out the territory for the wherever it's going to be built, the property. And they basically teach this American dude the history of the site. And the history involves this Djinn and how this female Djinn left a baby in this couple's apartment, and then they call in a preacher to essentially exorcise the like demonic presence and try to send this baby on its own to live a normal life and not be involved with the Djinn.
Okay.
And then the dudes get killed or whatever. You never see him again, but it just sets up that history of that specific spot. And then later you find out that the husband is actually the baby from the story they're telling.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's half human, half
He's
Djinn.
half human, half Djinn. And then you also find out that his wife, they have a baby. And initially you think it's like sudden infant death syndrome that the baby that causes the death of the baby, but it turns out she killed the baby because she knew the history of the story of Djinn.
And it looked like a demon baby.
It looks like a demon baby. It has like
it's like-
black eyes, weird.
It's like the crib reveal that we
Yeah.
never got from Rosemary's Baby.
Exactly. Yes. That's
Gotcha.
yes. So you see a lot of
So
shots
they go
of
full
her
demon
hovering.
in this
Yes.
Yeah,
version.
but
So
it
there's
doesn't
no-
look good. It's like all shitty FX.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so bad. Like it
So-
could have been practical, and it had a $5 million
Yes,
budget, so it
yes.
was like no money. But like if it were practical, it could have
would've
been
looked way
fun
better.
and cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And represented, like, I mean, they were, speaking their native language. They had
Mhm.
actors that were not, American. There was only
Mhm.
1 or 2 Americans in there. And like, I think that like culturally in terms of representation, like it could have been, it was actually not bad, but like, the story just fell so flat because
Yeah.
of how ridiculous the characters were, how ridiculous the plot was, and how bad it looked.
It was just so choppy. And
Yeah.
so essentially they're lured to this property by his mother, the Djinn.
Okay.
And you find out that they're living in this apartment complex that's not even finished yet. Because at one point he calls the police and they show up and it's like a building still under construction, but there's people there and it seems done to them. And they go up to the penthouse floor, and that's kind of where the final battle takes place, which is the 61st floor, I think, of that building. It's a very large building. And the Djinn essentially tells him your wife killed your son, and he pushes her off a ledge and kills her and says, you know, blood for blood.
Blood for blood.
Blood for blood. This is my home. And then he turns around and transforms into a djinn, and then it's credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
We took that for y'all. Like
We took that.
you don't have,
So
you don't have
basically-
to watch it. But
Basically,
we did
what
for
you're
you.
saying is that David and Justin we're really banking on your Djinn movie being a lot better.
A lot
Yes.
better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I've heard rumblings of it being much.
Yes, I have
much
heard. I have
like
heard good things from the people that run the fest. so,
fest favorite is what I've heard
Yes.
from some.
So.
So yeah, I'm very excited.
Yes. Well, I feel like we couldn't go without at least mentioning Kazam.
Andrea.
And if we're gonna mention Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal, we have to talk about 1994's Shazam with Sinbad, that may or may not exist.
Just like Djinn.
I'm still on the it exists camp, but I also am a fan of like time loops and multi-dimensional stuff. So I'm thinking like, you know, there was a split in 2012 when the world ended and we got sucked into the black hole, and like half of us remember it and half of us don't.
Like the Berenstein Bears.
Yeah, but it's, you know, like it happened and Phil Hartman was in it. And I want to say the Landis kid was in it too.
No, really?
Yeah,
Jonathan Landis?
I swear, like I have
Oh, wait,
vivid
no.
memories of this thing.
I'm thinking of someone else.
But people can revisit our Mandela. That was
Yeah,
the-
if you've
but when did we
never-
get into that? Was that the Candle Cove episode?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
It
Yeah.
was
If you've
definitely
never
the
listened to our podcast before, this is the first time you've ever listened to it. We talk about cannibals and
Shazam.
Shazam.
I want
It's
to
a terrible
revisit this.
summary, but
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I feel like also just to kind of wrap up the concept of Djinn, do you feel like right now, are you more a fan of the concept of a dark representation of the Djinn, or do you like the lightheartedness that is in a lot of our pop culture? I feel like for me, I think there is a lot of room for the dark concept to come out and like have some fun, because
I agree. Yeah.
I think that we have plenty of cute, fun genies. But I think we could totally explore some more spooky stuff. I mean, there was like that Wish, the Wish movie or whatever with I can't remember her name. She found that Wish box.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Wishbox.
It has that girl from the Kissing Booth in it, and I can't think of what her name is.
Oh, what is it?
But it's just called like Wish Upon. That's what it's called.
That's what it is. Yep.
And that's one where I feel like it majorly failed with the concept. So again, the concept of darkness coming from your wishes, I feel like is something that I have enjoyed in other movies, and I think that it could be a really good thing to explore more of. So, and especially
I agree.
as a concept, I think there could be tons of really cool dark interpretations of it. So,
Like
I'm gonna completely not answer this question and say I love the duality of it and the fact that they can be like really super evil or not, or sometimes they just don't care and they're just like having fun with humans. But I kind of like that aspect of it.
I was gonna say something similar, Andrea. Like I like the lighthearted genie. Like how can you not enjoy that concept?
Yeah.
And then like the fumbling genie, and then the genie that has, or Djinn that has this evil element to it. There's so much you could do with it. I like the duality as well.
Yeah.
But
that
give
could be
me
good
more
for,
dark.
like, a series, you know?
Yeah.
Like a good series with different kinds of Djinn almost like existing in the same universe or something.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like it's just such a missed opportunity though for practical effects. I feel like this would be such a cool, you know, and then I'm very curious about the film that's playing at Panic Fest. Like I'm curious about how they approach it, because yeah, I just think that you can do a lot of really cool visuals with this kind of folklore and storyline.
Oh my gosh, we need filmmakers out there. Like I want an anthology series.
Ooh, that would be
fun.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, you could totally do an anthology with just Djinn
with just
being
various
the,
stories of filmmakers.
Yeah, I need this. Come
Here
on,
we go.
Please.
bring it.
So much fun. You could do so much with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for those of you that are new to the show, we usually we always end our episodes with us talking about what has been casting a spell on us this week. So we haven't done this in quite a while because
God, yeah.
season 1 ended. We're coming up on season 2 soon, so we hope that you'll come back, check out some of our older episodes, or join us with season 2. But ladies, what's been casting a spell on you lately? What this week, lately, you know, whatever it is. What's something you've loved lately?
So I was undecided about this up until Marissa was talking about like how different like the Djinn and the representation. And we see all these tropes and the same types of like evil in movies. And something that I caught at the Panic Fest Tricks and Treats was the Vigil. And it is about a funeral, and in Jewish tradition, they have somebody watch the body that's a shomer. And this guy, without getting into spoiler territory, but basically he has to watch the body through the night. And it's incredible. One of the first movies in a long time that like legitimately scared me. Like I was very uncomfortable through this entire thing, looking over my shoulder, kind of like little noises, the cats are jumping off stuff, and I'm like, ready to fight. But really, really good. I think it's pretty limited where you can watch it right now. I think it's for rent a few places, but I'm hoping it gets picked up for a wider distribution because it was just amazing and very nice to see a different cultural perspective from a different type of religious belief, because like I love spooky like Catholic exorcism movies and stuff like that. But like after a while it's like, okay, let's get a different perspective on things. And it was like very refreshing.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about that movie.
I have
so
too,
it's definitely been on my to watch list. So I'm definitely gonna have to check it out when I can. So Marissa, what about you?
I've been revisiting 11/22/63.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
So that is probably my top 3 favorite Stephen King books, and I love the series a lot, so I've been revisiting the series lately. And not a huge James Franco fan, but he does a really good job in that series. And so yeah, it's like a comfort sort of for me, but I do like how there's a lot of different aspects to it. Like there's a horror element, there's a historical element, there's romance element, and then also sci-fi with the concept of the butterfly effect. So it's kind of relevant to what we talk about in this episode, in the sense that like the plot of the book and the TV show is if you could go back in time, like essentially the main character is able to go back in time, and he tries to stop the JFK assassination in Dallas. And you know, when he goes back, it's like his decisions and his actions, the past is kind of personified and it pushes against him and tries to keep it the way things are, but it's so good. It's like you think that this one event would need to be stopped, but actually like that one event may have happened for a reason and things could have been worse had it not happened. So it explores kind of like wanting to go back or change things or wish things were different. Maybe it's for the best after all, like in a fucked up kind of way, but it's so great. If y'all aren't familiar or haven't read the book or haven't watched the series, they're both amazing. So I've just kind of been revisiting that.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go off on kind of a weirder thing and go with, I've been really enjoying a website called itch.io or itch.io. I don't know. Some people pronounce it itch.io. I don't know. And it's a gaming website. Basically, you can go on there and like find games to download, and I just never really knew this thing existed until I started watching. There's a guy on YouTube that I watch named John Wolf, and he does game walkthroughs and stuff for basically anything spooky. And so he was doing all these things. He does this series where it's 3 random horror games or 4 random horror games or whatever. And they're usually short form games. Like they're probably like 20 minutes long, you know? And so I really was liking watching his stuff. And then he kept saying, oh yeah, I found this game on Itch.io, blah, blah, whatever. And so I finally was like, I'm going to check this out. And literally, first of all, I could download most of them on my Mac, which is pretty cool because a lot of games are, you know, PC specific, but I've been downloading a lot of the free ones, the free to play ones. And it's just so fun. Like I played this one called Project Cat, and it was basically kind of anime-esque, I guess, but it's this little schoolgirl, and she joins the I can't get Coven Club out of my head but it's not Coven Club, the occult club at her school. And they basically are all like, oh, you're not really into this, whatever. But then the whole time you're playing the game, you're trying to set up like a ritual thing. And so then you're able to complete the ritual. You go into this like dark dimension thing. It's very like weird. You're just kind of like walking through and like clicking through. And it's almost just a story that you're kind of partially playing through. You don't do a lot of gaming, it's not like you're running away or having to jump around or stuff. But yeah, anyways, if you just want something fun and quick to play, another one I played was 6 Cats Under, I think. And it was literally you are a grandma who's been crushed by her bookshelf.
What?
Oh my God, that's going to be me one day.
And so that she has a bunch of
Maybe
cats.
just old, not a grandma, but
my cats are gonna eat me.
She has a bunch of cats, and you as her you're like her ghost, and you have to like go through and try to like you'll like kind of make the toilet paper wave a little bit so that your cat tries to play with it, but you're basically trying to like get the cats to do enough.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you have to get the cats to do enough to get them to open the door so that like somebody can find your body.
Funny.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's
what
really
is this
ridiculous.
website?
Itch.io, like itch.io instead of .com. But yeah.
I want to play. That sounds amazing.
I mean, it's literally like a 5-minute game if you like. It's not.
Yeah, but
it's like super cute. The pixely art and like, it's so. I love to see what people come up with because it's a lot of indie game. You know, it's people that are like 2 people maybe that or 1 person that made this game. You know, so it's really fun. So I highly recommend it. And plus, people are freaking creepy. Like, some stuff is very scary. Like, there's one called Pink where it's just like this girl and you think you're watering a plant the whole time. But then, like, it gets real weird. So, yeah. Anyway, highly recommend checking it out. It's fun to just go through. So,
interesting.
Okay, Kaylee, what's your thing?
So I got, there's only 8 episodes, but I got really into this podcast earlier this week called The Opportunist. And this is the first season of it, but essentially like the premise of each season is it's true stories of regular people who turn sinister simply by being opportunistic. So the first season is about this woman named Sherry Shriner who started an internet cult, basically. Like, she grew up in a church and suddenly got obsessed with the idea that, you know, all these famous people and political people were reptilians and that aliens were coming, and she sold all these, like, she made these rocks called orgone, and she called her followers Orgone warriors. And it's 8 episodes, and it's basically about how this woman just essentially got obsessed with this idea and then got on YouTube and started preaching her beliefs and got all these followers, which eventually ends up in like a murder, maybe suicide, and a couple of other weird deaths that she's kind of blamed for, but they can't really blame it, like, you know, because she wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because her followers never saw her face. She was an older woman that had, I think, 4 children and was married, but she was very prevalent on the internet up until I think she died in 2017, maybe, because she was a Trump supporter. Like, towards the end of her life, she kind of fell into that.
Yeah, all that makes
that's why she died.
No, there's a movie screening next week at Panic Fest about Pizzagate. Have you guys watched the trailer?
Duncan.
Duncan, I am so excited.
I haven't watched the trailer yet, but it's on my. That was my side thing. Is I've been really busy with work lately and just other random things going on, and I took 5 days off to attend Panic Fest because it's always been my vacation. If I haven't worked it, I'll take time off to go to movies. So I have my spreadsheet that I'm planning, and I've been watching trailers for the last whenever it was they released a schedule, I think it was Monday of this week. So I've just been kind of delving into what am I watching? When can I see it? Like how many movies can I watch in a day? What movies can I watch from home? Because I got a hybrid pass,
Yeah,
so I
it's
can
even
watch
more
online and in
complicated this
person.
year because
Yes.
it's like, oh, I can do both.
Yeah. But it's nice because I can't take 10 days off of work. So I can yes. But I can like plot out the movies I want to see in person, and then I know I'll have 5 extra days to
Yeah,
catch
to watch
things
stuff.
online. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. So yeah, Panic Fest, it's happening.
Woo!
So excited.
Well, yeah, we got to thank Panic Fest.
Yes,
for letting
please.
us be a part of this year's fest. It's been really exciting. We were excited to kind of kick off our season 2 with this episode.
Yeah.
So, well, before we end, whether you are a returning listener or just checking us out during Panic Fest, thanks for joining us here today, and joining our coven. So season 2 is coming up, and we're going to be chatting about Fear of the Forest for Earth Day. So you can join us. That's our first episode back, is on Earth Day. We're going to be talking about the Watcher House, the Black-Eyed Children, the Granny Ripper, blood cults, and so much more.
The Granny Ripper. I love that one.
We've got it all.
So make sure you find us on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Black Magic Coven. And please subscribe and leave us a review. So we really appreciate you guys checking us out during the fest.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of the movies or pods, or there's so much going on.
I know.
And the gather space and all of the things.
Yeah, gather.
I know.
And Tim has put so much work. There's also, I guess we should mention, we do have our own space in gather.
Yes,
right?
we do.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can, if you're new to the podcast or you want to revisit old episodes, I know Tim has put these little, I don't remember what he called them. These little like widgets about where you can click and listen to episodes or
The
preview.
Fresno Nightcrawlers are there.
Yep, they are. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, and I'll be roaming around gather space
Yes,
throughout
I will
Panic
too.
Fest.
Yeah, I will try as well to be.
It's so fun. I love it.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks,
well,
guys.
Yes, this concludes the gathering of the Black Magic Coven.